Okay, Justice Connect acknowledges the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation and the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation as the traditional owners of the lands on which we meet and we work. Today, meeting in a virtual and physically dispersed way, we also acknowledge the various traditional lands on which we all live and work. We acknowledge the sovereignty was never ceded and pay our respects to elders past and present. So moving to our agenda today, we will have Lane Houghton from the Victorian Law Foundation, which sponsored this research, saying a few words. Then a presentation from Joe Stefanska, one of the two brilliant expert designers who conducted this research. And we have a special guest, Nelly, who is one of our research participants. Kate Fazio, our Head of Innovation and Engagement, will reflect on how this research sits alongside other projects at Justice Connect, and how we'll apply the insights in our work. And then at the end, we'll have questions and answers. I'm Raquel dos Santos, Head of Programs at Justice Connect. It's my pleasure to introduce this webinar launching our user research project conducted entirely online in 2020. Before we share more about our research approach, just a few words about Justice Connect. We are an Australian charity operating nationally with offices in Melbourne and Sydney, and staff working in many partner locations, including courts and hospitals. Our purpose is to design and deliver high-impact interventions to increase access to legal support and social justice. We help both individuals and community organizations and have an interdisciplinary team with many in-house lawyers. We also have designers and developers. And of course, critical to our ability to deliver our services is our network of 10,000 pro bono lawyers and 50 member firms, and our close relationships with barristers across the country. We are facing huge levels of unmet legal needs. So we are increasingly focused on finding scalable solutions to be able to reach and help more people. But we all know that providing meaningful, impactful assistance online is not as simple as publishing a few fact sheets. Justice Connect is a complex organization, and the ecosystem that we operate is even more complex. Yet many people looking for help online are capable, resourceful, and resilient. So in that context, and with support from the Victoria Law Foundation, we designed this project to build on our previous consumer research and help us better understand the opportunity to help more people online, but also the limits of online legal assistance. And we did that by involving the people we want to help deeply in answering these questions. So a big thank you to all our research participants who are by experience the real experts here on how we can improve the design of online resources. I'll now hand over to Lane Houghton from the Victoria Law Foundation to say a few words.
Raquel, thank you so much for the opportunity to be part of today's launch. Congratulations on the work that you've done, and to the participants and the designers and to Justice Connect, what you've done in terms of the next steps in exploring the way that people find help in their legal dilemmas. And as we all know, and as you've just pointed out, that's going to be increasingly important. It's vital that we know where we stand before we really developed effective materials for people to rely on in the way in which they navigate what are essentially fairly complex systems to resolve problems themselves. This project was supported by a knowledge grant from the Law Foundation, and it has the distinction of being amongst the very first batch of knowledge grants that we offered. Because a couple of years ago, the Victoria Law Foundation established a research function. And in keeping with that new direction, we shifted the focus of our major research, our major grants, in line with that research orientation to support organisations like Justice Connect and so many others, working in and around the law to improve the way that they collect data, analyse it and apply it in supporting Victorians and Australians more broadly. And as we all know, quality data, getting hold of it and using it intelligently is a critical aspect of work in the sector, and is only going to be more and more so as the years unfold. And data sets such a strong foundation of evidence to improve service delivery and advocacy, and it's essential to greater transparency too, which is something that the legal sector could do with a whole lot more of. It's also really important as a tool for the sector because it tells such a strong story about the effectiveness of the work that Justice Connect and so many other organisations in our sector play. It really develops the story, I think, and the narrative that is very compelling when it comes to presenting government with irrefutable evidence of the impact that we have and the way that we can help Victorians and Australians understand their law better and manage that huge gap that is now increasingly evident between the information that we need and the affordability of services and the limited scope that there is for full legal assistance. We're going to rely increasingly on people to navigate these systems themselves. So our knowledge grants were very specifically designed to build capacity in the sector around data collection and to apply that specifically to civil legal problems. And we have three criteria that we set down for knowledge grants. They were to develop a new understanding of the legal needs of Victorians through data and information, to build capability of organisations to collect and analyse and use that data for particular groups or particular legal issues, and importantly to share that information with other organisations and as broadly as we can to make sure that the love is spread right across the sector and that we can lift all boats in terms of the useful insights that research such as this can reveal. And I can tell you that in all those dimensions, this work has completely aced it. So we were so impressed with the very strong proposal to extend the reach of legal assistance in all the ways that I've described, and to investigate what we started calling the missing middle and now we call the missing majority for reasons that I'm sure we'll hear about in more detail, and how important it is that we have a clear line of sight into where people stand now and how we can best support them to build their own confidence in managing legal challenges. The digital resources that have been developed, I think, are really an important tool in bridging that gap. And we're very proud that the resources and the findings that this report delivers on will not only inform Justice Connect, but will be a really critical resource for so many others who are looking to these kinds of modes of assistance in the future. So congratulations, Justice Connect, on all that you've done, and to the researchers and particularly to the participants, because I think we are increasingly conscious that we need to really talk to the people at the end of this chain and not make large assumptions about what people understand and what sort of formats suit them. So we are really grateful for your participation, and thank you again for the opportunity of playing a part in today. Well done. Thanks, Raquel.
Thank you, Lynn. Joe, we'll leave it with you now to start your presentation if you're ready.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction, Lynn and Raquel. So today I'm always Jo Stepanska, but I'm also here today with Nellie. She's one of our participants. I also see a few other friendly folks that were part of our research here today. So the format for today is I'm going to do a bit of a spiel, but as I'm kind of talking through that, feel free to write any questions that you might have for any of us involved into the chat box as we go along. So today I am super excited to be presenting to you about partnering with consumers. We have a few bonus special guests so they can also respond to any questions that you might have. Alrighty, let's launch into a bit of a show and tell. So today we are in uncharted territory when it comes to online self-help resources. In fact, legal help online has never been more desirable or necessary than 2020. It's important to note that this presentation and project about the missing majority took place entirely online during the coronavirus pandemic by a remote team. This has been a year that transformed how we did many things, and in many ways, the question around if people look for help on the internet to solve a legal problem is this year a resounding yes. Before we begin, I wanted to explain a little bit about my role here and how I design in my practice. I'm a designer and a researcher, and I have over the last 10 years been really busy working with communities to design services, advocate for system change, and mend services using design. The easy way I put it is I'm a design acupuncturist. I use design to alleviate pain and suffering, unblocking chi from things that don't work. For over the last 5 years, I've been working with Justice Connect and their communities to design the legal gateway and test out other wild ideas. For today, I'm not going to be focusing so much on our report that we just delivered with the team. You can read and reflect on that in your own time. And we can hear about that a little bit later down the track too. So, apart from being a design expert, which I feel awkward saying, I'm also an expert by experience. As a legal self-helper myself, I have been that 16-year-old that filled out forms and wrote letters to landlords and government departments. I have asked Fair Work for advice on bullying and entitlements. I have questioned and experienced a shonky eviction in a country that had a language I couldn't speak. Every application, I have spelt out my surname patiently, and I've apologized that my birth certificate looks like a fake. I know personally what it's like not to fully understand what is happening to you in the legal system, and I know how it feels to not have the right words to describe what is happening so that others can help. The reason I'm here is both simple and complicated. I want people like me and the people I care about to solve their own legal problems. I want to give them a fair and well-deserved fighting chance. The way that I'm going to present today's talk is going to be using the golden circle. The golden circle first explains why, then what, and then how. Most of our time will be spent on the why. So, why should you partner with legal help seekers? I can see a few powerful motivators, among them human common sense reasons and external drivers like reforms. Starting with external drivers, it feels like there are a lot of things shifting and moving right now. Hopefully for the better, I have my fingers crossed. Across multiple sectors, the foundations are being set down. You can see it in healthcare, mental health, family violence reform, and Aboriginal affairs. They all have common threads and build a really compelling push that services need to be designed by communities in order to meet their needs. And that's what we all need to do to make it better. Tying in with the fact that we are just a few days away from International Day of People with Disability, the National Disability Strategy in particular has some powerful policy directions looking specifically at access to justice. Despite some assumptions that I've heard a few times that people with disabilities can't or don't want to use online tools, they definitely do. And if anything, they need better and more equal access. The practical reason for partnering with your communities are just simply to create better ideas and designs. Working with communities, or at very least engaging them in testing, leads to better outcomes. Co-design leads to designs that work better for people and are actually used. You create more innovative and resilient services. And as a bonus, you build better workplaces to be working in, because you're doing what really matters. So what does partnership actually mean? Some levels of partnership are really easy to do, or can't even really be avoided. Figuring out what is happening to someone over a phone call, providing resources or advice, helping them navigate the legal process, or using a lengthy form. These are all ways that the legal sector partners with communities day to day. Partnership when delivering legal services directly to a person are a given. The trick is, it's not all just about direct help. Partnering with communities has multiple levels. You have the service, the organisation, and the bigger system. Having community members participate in planning, implementing, and evaluating change is still really rare, but hopefully it's coming. At the service level, partnership looks like having communities participate in the overall design of services, departments, or programs. Community members might be involved in quality improvement, or even members of your design team. They can take part in planning and implementation, or checking in how things are working. At the level of an organisation, partnership is having community involved in overall governance, policy, and planning. For that, communities might have a say on privacy or safety. They might be involved in space design. They might be pushing towards quality improvement, community education, ethics, or what's researched. At a system level, we get into really exciting participatory democracy stuff. That's a talk for a later time, I think. And unfortunately, or quite clearly, not all involvement is equal either. If it is about engaging people, it's really about moving from complaining to co-creating. I would say that most services out in the world still get their feedback from communities using complaints or surveys. Partnership has traditionally looked like writing a response on behalf of a group to a government department, having a consumer on a subcommittee or a steering group, or having a feedback form somewhere, sending out an annual survey that somebody will respond to. But what we know is they just don't work. They aren't as inclusive as they need to be. Many people miss out on participating. The feedback is often self-selecting, and we don't even get the chance to reach the people who don't use our services at all. So in healthcare, we have this continuum of patient experience, which goes all the way from complaining, giving information, listening and responding, consulting and advising, to bigger things like full participation and involvement. And then at the very end, we have experience-based co-design. So it's all about moving our participation up the chain. So how would you go about it, is the question I often get asked. Well, the first step is making the time. You're probably sitting here thinking, I rarely have the time to even make the changes I want to, let alone partner with others in the process. Call it whatever you need to, exposure hours or immersion, or even professional development, 2 hours every 6 weeks of talking to your community or observing and reflecting how they use your products or services makes the world of difference. The important thing to think about is that you need ongoing commitment and connection to community in order to make larger, more profound changes. And it's all about precedent. There's some examples of this that have been happening in large changes like gov.uk, where they've been encouraging all staff to take on exposure hours. Having great results means recruiting the right people. You can't do that without setting goals for who you're really looking for and creating a really diverse and specific participant mix. It's not just ages and backgrounds that you're looking for. You need to also think about how their mindset is set and their life experience. To do that, you need to create really wonderful and accessible screening surveys, but also have calls and conversations. Being specific around who you're looking for and tailoring your invitations and incentives will help you be successful. If you can identify who it is that you're looking for, that's exactly what you need. Finding the right people and having them invite others is also really wonderful way of expanding your reach. Being clear about who you are, what you do, where the information you're gathering will go is all really important when it comes to informed consent. As for practical tools, I'm about to share some in quick succession. They are all kind of covered quite deeply in our delivered report. And I guess at the very beginning, when you're starting your research, it's about boosting the confidence of the people that you're working with. The first tool I'd like to talk about is actually quick experiments or 5-minute tests. They're a great way to ask for feedback. And in this project, we ran a variety of searching simulations. During that, people were given a hypothetical scenario where they created a character they would represent, including age, what was going on in their lives, and confidence. Then they would start a live search. Talking about how you would search is obviously very different than running a simulation. The simulations helped us to build a clear picture of what was going on, how many tabs were open, all the confusion and consolidation happening. So I might actually throw this to Nellie. What was it like going through a searching scenario?
To start with, it was a little unusual because I've never had to talk through my search while doing a search. It's just something that kind of you do in your head. So it was just a bit unusual just to get started. But once I got into it, it was pretty easy. And I'd never really thought about how I searched as a way of doing it, and that other people would then do it differently. So that was a bit unusual to kind of get into. But I found it really interesting. I never thought that watching someone and understanding how they search is actually a really valuable piece of information for someone to get. You can learn a lot about someone, about how they search and what they're going to look for and kind of which way they source their information. So that was really cool.
It was so valuable for us to see everybody's techniques and approaches. And I think what's really great to see is that there were some commonalities in how people were looking. And if we surfaced information a little bit better based on how people were looking for stuff, then we could improve access to good information earlier on. So the next kind of activity that we had was card sorting. So tools like card sorting are a great way to check how simple ideas pan out for personal preference and I guess even bias. This project saw us conduct a card sorting activity, mostly online, but 2 with physical posted cards. And participants were asked to have a look at these ideas and rank them according to which ones they were more likely to use and which ones they were less likely to use. We also had a few that participants just refused to even look at or consider. And so I might just share a quick snippet video of what a search looked like. So as we were going through the search, people would tell us where to move things and what they would rank things, which ones would be most helpful, easy to find, hard to find, and more and less trustworthy. So, Nellie, how did you feel about going through our searching adventure? Well, not our searching adventure, our sorting adventure.
First, it's easy because you gravitate to things that you naturally are used to, and tools that you would generally use yourself. And then it got a bit easy enough to remove the ones that you would never use. And then there's a bunch in the middle that you've never really considered even that being an option. So I found that interesting. I had to really consider my situation and would I use that service or not. And then they added all these extra questions like what, not only what's kind of more likely to use or not, then they're saying like, what's the hardest to find, or what do you think is the most expensive, and what do you think's the hardest to use? And not knowing all of these options in this situation, then I guess there's a whole bunch of judgment that I can put on each of those things before I've actually really tried them. But it gives you an understanding of kind of where the common person sits as a starting point.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for us, it kind of brought about like a very high bias against chatbots, where everyone kind of put them as either really excellent starting point or a really bad thing in general. And so I think for us, it meant that we needed to investigate that a little bit further with people to get to the bottom of why it was on one end of the spectrum or the other. Very polarizing thoughts. But it definitely showed us that things like, you know, tools that helped you see options and compare them often were ranking quite highly, and many tools were actually grouped together so that people could kind of consolidate their thinking by comparing what each of the options had. But ideally, partnering with consumers isn't just about testing things once you've already created them. You can also involve them from the very beginning. And they can help you describe how services work from their side. They can tell you about gaps they've noticed, or they can imagine simpler approaches to how you're designing things. You don't even need a worksheet or a tool for these sorts of things. All you need is some great open questions and a bit of time to listen. So you don't need anything fancy to get started. Using what people told us during the interviews and what we saw during the tests help us piece together maps and timelines based on experiences like this one for Jay in the report. Maps like these we use in service design. We call these journey maps, and they are really helpful for us to identify where processes are complicated, time-consuming, or in some cases broken altogether. And Jay's map is extraordinary, 23 steps in order to get to the point where he knows what he has to do about his employment issue. Of course, these maps are one step removed from the truth, and in many ways, they can be interpreted differently based on who you are and what your background is. The goal of these sorts of maps are really to kind of provoke your thinking and not necessarily replace speaking to your community members. So I want to make that perfectly clear. They are a way for you to get started and get thinking in the mindset of the people looking for online help. You should always be talking to them about what they're looking for and how they're looking. So the final thing I have to share with you today is really, where do you get started? And I think one-on-one usability testing is a really great place to start, especially if you're not so confident, kind of leaping into the world of open questions and navigating all of that information that you'll be gathering. The easiest way to start is to simulate things like scenarios where you can observe people looking at your design and trying to use it. You can share a prototype that you've made yourself. You can test something somebody else has made, or you can even share a rough concept. This particular tool is one of my favorites. It's called Pens of Power, and it's a really simple feedback technique that you could use starting today. All you need is a bit of content to test. So it could be a form, a letter, a brochure, an email, a website, 15 minutes, 2 markers, a smile and an open mind. Online, you can do this using a Word document with a few color markers. And if you have someone who doesn't feel super confident in typing and writing, you can always offer to write on their behalf. So essentially what you do is you mark green areas that are good or working really well. Red is not so good, needs a bit of work or can be removed. And then you kind of look at shuffling content up and down a page so that the really important things are at the beginning and then the less important things are down the end. So I guess to finish this little bit of talking about partnering with communities is that we're kind of all in this together. And if this year has taught us anything, it's that none of us really have all of the answers. And that if we all want to get out of the mindset of complaining all the time that things aren't working the way we want them to, then we can start small and we can move up this kind of continuum towards a bit more partnering. So I might throw this over to you, Kate. Hopefully you've made it from wherever you are around Australia.
Hi, thank you, Jo. What a fantastic presentation. I have had the benefit of already seeing this presentation a couple of times, and it just, it blows me away. And the research report is just so full of incredible insights. And you can just tell how much time has gone into this research from both those that were involved as our consumers, providing their time to us and their thoughts, and also from the research team. So congratulations to the research team. It's really valuable work. I'm head of innovation and engagement at Justice Connect, and I am just going to tell you very quickly a little bit about how this type of inclusive design and consumer research plays a role in our approach at Justice Connect to product and service development and design. So the little diagram I have on the slide at the moment shows our approach, which is really one of iteration. And research like this plays a really critical role at a few points for us. So we aspire and really try to do consumer research before we create any new product or service. So a report like this can play a role in that very preliminary stage before we make any decision to invest in a new product or service. And it also plays a really critical role at the iteration point. So you'll see in this diagram that when we design a product or service, we release it and then we really carefully evaluate it and we improve it and we re-release it. And so this consumer research plays a role in that evaluation stage as well as in our initial design stage. So this report at Justice Connect is going to help us do two things. It's going to help us evaluate and reflect on existing products that we already have, and it's going to help us think about what else could we be doing and make some decisions about where we could be investing our resources to build new products and services based on what we now know because of this research. So it plays such an important role, this type of research, for us across the whole organisation, across all our products and services and program areas. So I can't emphasise enough how valuable this type of work is, and it has a real enduring value as well. As Jo mentioned, she's worked with Justice Connect before. On our Gateway project, she helped us do a range of consumer research with us a number of years ago. And so, Jo, if you don't mind, could you click over to the next slide? And really what I wanted to show here is a bit of here's one we prepared earlier. So this is a product that has gone through a few of those iteration cycles. On the computer screen there, the laptop is our pro bono portal that was developed through our Gateway project. And on the smartphone there is our Justice Connect intake tool. And these are two products at Justice Connect that have been through multiple iteration cycles, each of which has involved this intensive consumer research and intensive consumer feedback to inform that evaluation and that iteration cycle. And it really does add so much value. It helps you get to a better product much more quickly if you're practicing inclusive design, because the people that use your products are the ultimate experts. So that is really all I wanted to say is congratulations to the team. And there's lots we can do with this research, and I'm sure there's lots that people across the whole sector can do with this research at their own organisations to think about what it tells them about their own products and services and the directions they might be able to take.
Thank you so much, Kate. This project is just one small piece of all of the amazing transformation work that's been happening in Justice Connect over the last 5 years. We are opening now for questions, so feel free to write your questions in the chat box. I already have a couple of questions that came through, so we may start with those. So I have a question from Hannah. How many people did you co-design with?
Okay, so this is going to be a hairy one because I don't think we quite got to co-design here. Like, we're definitely using human-centered design, so we're somewhere in the messy spot between human-centered design, where you're involving research participants in telling you what's happening and what's wrong, and co-design, where they're also starting to design solutions. So we involved 15 people, and they're all remarkably intersectional. So I feel like we've almost been really lucky that we've got such diverse and rich points of view and life experience among our mix. So we only had 15 people involved in this piece of research, but I feel like they're pretty excellent folks, and I've been really excited to learn from all of them.
Absolutely. Maybe I can just throw back to Nelly to tell us a little bit about why, what motivated you to sign up for this project. Nelly, why did you decide?
Yes, so I was scrolling on Facebook and saw a post that said, hey, we need volunteers for a research project on free legal help. If you've ever tried to find free legal help online, then please join us. And I was that person who has tried to find free legal help online, try and get a quick answer to see whether I am going to need a lawyer to get some assistance or whether I can just kind of answer the question myself. And I found in my own experience that was really difficult for me. So then I went and saw this post and went, yeah, if someone's going to make this better, then I want to be part of it. So that's pretty much, that's all it took.
Excellent. And what was like to sign up? What was the process and how did you feel about it?
I felt really good about, it was a really easy process. You just had to fill out a quick survey, and I guess they just got some information from us to find out what kind of legal help we were looking for at the time, and asked us a few questions to kind of find out who we were. And then they said, yep, sure, we'd love to have you on board. And then we started doing some of these activities online, as Jo has showed. And I never really, like, sometimes I answer an online survey and I can tell the kind of answers they're looking for. You can kind of tell, someone goes, hey, do you like my product? Do you like the red? We like the red. And you're like, yeah, okay, we like the red. And you can tell that they're leading somewhere. Throughout this entire time that I spent with Joe and Emma, yeah, I really didn't have an understanding about where they wanted to head, which I felt great because it felt really kind of authentic. It wasn't swayed in any way. They literally just said, hey, we want to follow you and see what you do online if you're trying to find online help. And I showed them and they went, great, thanks. And now go and do this activity and rank all these different cards. And I went, okay, sure. And I ranked them and I didn't feel like there was any kind of hidden agenda, which made it really, I don't know, great to be part of, because I could tell there's something that they're doing is just finding out info. So I felt that was really cool. And the activities were actually kind of fun. I was happy to be part of it. And yeah, really easy, especially while we're, you know, being part of this year and what it was. I felt like it was also a great way to be looking for online help and doing all of this online. It kind of really fitted. What good timing.
So valuable. Thank you, Nally. I'm going to ask a question to you, Joe, coming from Sarah. With the card sorting activity, was the participant interacting with the mirror board, or did the facilitator do it for the participant?
That's a great question. And I think you did identify that tool too. So we used Miro for our card sorting activity, which is kind of like an online whiteboard. And in this particular case, we actually had one of us asking questions and the other one being hands. So kind of like remote hands. So people would tell us where to move stuff and they would tell us what they were thinking, and we would type notes and move them around for them. And we found that really useful because sometimes when people do things on their own, then they don't need to kind of describe why they've made choices. And so in many ways, that was another kind of excuse for us to go, oh, is it higher or lower? And it was really great to have our participants kind of pull us up if we made a mistake as well, because that really helped us be sure that they were having full reign of where things went and how things were sorted. So we made sure that we checked in multiple parts, like, is this what you're thinking? Is this right?
Great.
Yeah, that was really easy to tell them, like, no, just move it over a little bit. No, I think this fits with that one or whatnot. And although I didn't do it myself, it kind of felt like I was. I would say it and then it would move for me.
Like magic. Great. I have another question here about the impact of COVID-19 on the research and how the research design was impacted and pivot. Jo, do you want to take that one?
Oh, yes, that's a great question. So I guess initially this was just going to be 2 simple workshops, wasn't it? 2 simple workshops, and we were going to be, you know, figuring out what's happening and get it done really, really quickly. And I think COVID happened and we had to change everything, to be honest. And I think there was a moment at the very beginning where, you know, that even I, as a researcher, was questioning whether or not this research needed to happen, because I was like, people have got so much on their plate right now. We're probably not very safe. Like, especially the groups that we wanted to talk to would be really stressed, both financially and just in headspace, to be able to participate in this sort of thing. But then I had some trusted advisors. So they're here today, Kevin and Andrea, and I called them up, and they're consumer reps too. And they were like, no, we need to do this. This needs to happen. And, you know, if we can't participate, then we won't participate. You know, you have to give us a chance. And so then we kind of went back to the team and we discussed how we add as much value as possible to the participants and how we make this as in-depth and as diverse as we can so that we don't waste anything. And so we decided that the best way to go about it would be to run one-on-one sessions, so have a really deep conversation with each person. And then we wrangled Justice Connect to up the reimbursement amount, and we doubled it. because we were no longer using a space, we were no longer doing catering and all those sorts of things. So that kind of felt a bit fairer when we were kind of shifting our approach. The other thing that kind of shifted was we created probably the most robust research plan I have ever written in my life. And it was such a doomsday plan that if one of us went missing, the research could continue, essentially was what we had written it. And so we had all of the questions, all of the activities, everything all bundled up so that, you know, if things really got wild and, you know, one of us got sick or anything happened, that this thing could continue. And again, we weren't losing information or momentum kind of going through this project.
Fantastic. It was definitely challenging, but boy, it was rewarding just to be here now and having done that in 2020. What a fantastic achievement. Jo, we have a question from Carly about the card sorting activities. Which tools would you recommend to use for card sorting activities?
So at the moment, there are probably a variety of different tools you can use. It depends how many cards you have and how much data you want to collect. So for the smaller tools, for smaller sorts where you've got only a few things, you can actually just use things like PowerPoint online. If you've got like a few things, like 10 things, and you want to sort them, then you can just make them in PowerPoint online and people can move them around in certain orders. For us, we used Miro, and that was just because we set up all of our interviews, had every single activity in Miro from start to finish. And so that kind of gave us also a bit of a visual timeline of where you're at in the interview as we progress through. There are also much more technical tools, so you can use things like Optimal Workshop, which does more of a really quite scientific approach to card sorting activities, and it can kind of do some smart things where it's like this card is always with this card, so they must be interrelated or there must be something in common there. But there are some great tools and great blogs, and I think we linked to them in the research plan and a bit of the report around, you know, there are resources around just using Excel, and that's enough for you to kind of start seeing some patterns.
Great, thank you. We've got another question, one from Steph on some specific recruitment tactics that you use to gather participants, especially in a virtual world.
Oh, yeah, I think the tricky thing of recruiting in a virtual space, especially during a pandemic, is if you don't have friends now, you're probably not going to make any new friends, I have to say. And so in many ways, it was about already having a few relationships ahead of time that we could call in on. And luckily Justice Connect is indeed connected. And I've got some friends in my spaces as well. But what we did do when we were making the recruitment, which was, I think, really important, was making a video. So we created a recruitment video of me and Emma being really dorky, and 1,000 cuts later, we had like a 30-second or 1-minute spiel about who we were, what we were trying to do, who we were looking for. And I think that's actually really helpful for like social media recruitment and online recruitment, because then you can see the person, you can hear their story. You don't need to read massive amount of text in order to get what the deal is. And you might actually recruit some people with different types of disabilities who might not want to or have the time to read lots and lots of text.
Thank you. We have lots of questions coming in, and we only have 9 more minutes. So we'll go through a couple more questions and then we'll try to find a way of sharing some answers with everyone later. I've got a question here from Chris, who is interested in what we found surprising during this research, what challenged our views or ideas about the challenges or issues involved in online legal help. Before I throw back at you, Joe, I might just quickly mention here that to me, it was really surprising to see that with all of the 15 participants, it was not their demographic characteristics or English speaking skills or level of education or background that influenced whether or not they would use online resources. It was really about whether or not they had engaged with the law before, whether they had some sort of understanding of the legal system and how confident and what was their mindset in trying to address their legal problem on their own. And for me, that was just really surprising, because we often hear those assumptions about capability and demographic characteristics, and at least with the bunch of participants we have, that was definitely not the case. I don't know, what about you, Joe? What was most surprising for you?
I think for me, I think I wasn't surprised, but I was excited to hear and have it confirmed how tenacious people were looking for online help. Like we heard lots of stories of people looking for help, giving up, having a cry, coming back to it the next day and continuing to look. And I think that's a story that needs to be heard. And I think it's a story that needs to be designed out of the system, because we want people to find help quicker so they can concentrate on other things, you know, their families, their livelihoods, you know, their better mental health. All these things are all kind of hinging on finding help quicker.
And I think when I read the report, I've said this to both of you, Raquel and Joe, it rang true in terms of very similar messages from our earlier research, just adding some extra depth and some extra insights to what we already knew. So nothing there surprised me. It just kind of built on what we already knew. But the thing that does surprise me is that we don't hear these stories told very much in the legal sector. So there are some very enduring assumptions about the way that consumers engage with legal services, about the way that different cohorts consume online information or engage with technology. And when you actually go and engage with people and ask them questions person to person, those assumptions just don't hold true. And so I think as a sector, we really need to start grappling with that. And I think the way we grapple with that is by doing more consumer engagement, doing more research with real people rather than just making some assumptions.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's see if we can get just through at least one more question. Joe, this one is directed at you from Marina, and Marina wants to know, what was the biggest challenge of doing this research online, and how did you overcome it?
I think the biggest challenge of this research was probably digital capability. Like one of our screening questions was, how confident do you feel, you know, using technology and tools? And then we had some people who were like, and we deliberately had this, extremely confident, like, I know everything there is to know about technology. And then we had some people who were like, I just have no idea. I wouldn't even put myself on this scale as confident. And so for us, the trick was kind of communicating that you have options, like, we can do this for you, you can do it yourself. If you need a paper version, we can give you a paper version. And so we just had to create essentially 3 versions of this project, which was like heavy touch, medium touch, and light touch. And so we needed to kind of go up and down depending on how people were going and how they were feeling along the way too. Like, we had one hairy moment where one of the participants started like on a mobile phone videotaping the screen share of their computer while searching. And we were like, you know what, we can read what they're typing. This sounds perfectly okay for what we're trying to do. But there were some moments where we were like, oh God, like this could go off the rails really quickly. Online, we can't gather this research any other way than if we can see it and we can hear it. So definitely, I think we needed to be more flexible in how we ran the research, and we also needed to kind of adjust based on how people were tracking. And I think Nellie was one example where we had 2 1-hour sessions because of children, you know, and so often women don't take part in this sort of research because they're taking care of children. And so for us, it was a discussion of, well, when's a good time, and we can split it up, and, you know, all sorts of things to adapt.
And Jo, were there any new research techniques that you tried and that you're going to keep after COVID for new research projects?
I think for me, it was just really exciting to be part of a research team, and I'd like to thank Emma and Justice Connect and the Victorian Law Foundation for supporting this, because I very rarely get to work with other people. It's just me and the participants and our little community that we build, trying to figure things out together. I think for me, what was really good about this was we managed to mix kind of more of a qualitative interview type of technique with hard testing. And so we not only heard about how people were looking, but then we could see how they were really looking online, and we could compare whether or not that was what they told us, and other things that we might notice if they weren't actually genuinely giving it a go. So I think mixing a bit of kind of a discussion along with actual live testing was actually a really good mix for us to kind of get the full picture, and then really targeted observations we could apply.
Fantastic. I think that's all we have time for today, but we have collected all the questions and we're going to try to figure out a way to answer those to all the participants who submitted. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you to the Victorian Law Foundation for sponsoring this significant project. Jo and Emma Blomkamp, the other brilliant designer who conducted this research, and of course all of our research participants, we could not have done without you. We look forward to joining you all in starting perhaps a community of practice in the new year. So let's keep the conversation going, and make sure to read our reports if you have not yet. You can find it on justiceconnect.org.au/mmreport. Thank you, everyone, and we see you next time.
Thank you. Good to see you all.